Ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 15 of NFL Elite Banter. I just knocked Freight Train off the screen by accident, my space bar.
Unreal.
It's crazy, man. We're a week away from one of the craziest events to happen. Then again, the free agency period was crazy. So I'm sure the draft is not going to disappoint.
I wouldn't expect anything less.
Yeah, it's the NFL, man. You never know what's going to happen until it happens. And you still can't believe it even after it does happen. But just keep an eye out, guys. Remember, one thing we've been talking about for a while, the mock draft giveaway is coming out. It will be done. I think the last day of the draft is Saturday. I will probably go through at some point Saturday or Sunday just to go through and figure out who the winners are, and it will be announced on the following Thursday. But remember, there's only a couple of different rules. They're very, very simple. Like the page, follow the page, and make sure you always submit one copy of the mock draft, whatever mock draft you want, by the way. It does not have to be PFF. It's whatever you want. You only get one submission to NFLEliteBanter@gmail.com. Send it over. We will be grading them. And then whoever has the most picks correctly, regardless of team or player, most correctly will go to get $50. But, yeah, I mean, again, it's free money, man. Free money.
Absolutely. Yeah, everybody loves free money.
Well, the thing is, the bigger the show gets, the bigger those prizes get. Hopefully by this time next year, we're doing a lot bigger than that. So I would love to have a $200-$300 giveaway one day, but again, we got to grow little by little, and by having these giveaways, share us around, man. The more money you help us earn, the more we give.
Right, you got to do the baby steps.
Baby steps every time. But so with that being said, Freight Train and I had a really cool idea for a topic. We kind of thought about this a little bit this morning, actually, and it can go a ton of different ways. So Freight Train, this topic was your idea. So I think you said there was a specific timeline, but top 5 draft classes of all time. So what are you looking at when you say top 5 draft classes?
I mean, obviously, we're not going to go talk about draft classes of like the 70s or even the early 80s, because we technically weren't alive during that time period to really see the magnitude of those drafts. You know what I mean? Like, we understand that there's Hall of Famers taken, but I didn't watch them on television. Per se, you know what I mean? So I'm going to say between the years of like 1988 up to present day, you know what I mean? So I think, I'll start off. I think the 1989 draft is a good one to start off with. You had, 5 Hall of Famers. I mean, arguably the most famous running back of all time. Some say the most talented running back of all time, and Barry Sanders was taken in that draft. You had Troy Aikman taking that draft, who is a Dallas Cowboys legend. Really helped turn that franchise back around after their time in the 70s. You had Steve Atwater go, towards the end of that first round. I had a lot of people pass on him, and he ended up being one of probably the top 5 safeties of all time.
Well, and I think that's definitely a good year to start with. I mean, there's definitely a lot of argument to be made that is one of the greatest draft classes of all time. 89, Sanders, Aikman, Derek Thomas, who's considered to be one of the best sackers of all time, Dion, the best corner, and Steve Atwater, often argued to be one of the best hitters of all time at safety. So all of them guys, minus Barry, have won a Super Bowl. I'm sorry, Derek Thomas did not win one. So 3 of the 5.
But you're talking about, guys that are etched in stone as the greatest of all time. You know what I mean? It wasn't like they had an amazing career. No, these are like some of the best to ever do it.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. I mean, listen, and again, we can go however we want. Now, this is not proven yet. Obviously, it's still new. But I got to say, the 2017 NFL draft class has to be on this list. It's funny. I was on a call today with John Collier, Big Dog. He's been on the show before. Shout out. And we were looking through a couple of the years, like 2017, 2018, 2019. 2019 wasn't so great. But you can almost, at this point, say, you know what, 27 and 2018 for the amount of depth that there was. Because there was some missed calls in 2018, like Clellan Ferrell to the Raiders at number 4 and like whatever. But the depth of those drafts, like Jordan Mailata went in 2017 or 2018, pick number 233. He's now the 4th highest paid left tackle in football. And obviously you got Mahomes and you got those kind of guys. You got Josh Allen. I mean, like, there's so many good guys in 2017. Just to name a few, Patrick Mahomes and Cooper Kupp, both of them Super Bowl winners right off the bat. There's 2 Super Bowl winners off the bat. Jalen Hurts also in 2017, obviously had a near MVP performance, also made the Super Bowl once. I mean, what a year. I mean, again, we can't compare the Hall of Famers in that regard, but the potential of the Hall of Famers in that draft is outstanding. I think T.J. Watt is that draft as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about, impact players, to say the least. You know what I mean? Franchise cornerstones that have came out of that draft. I mean,
Absolutely.
You have to put it up there.
Yeah, it's hard not to. It's really hard not to put the 2017 guys in there, just with the amount of talent. There's just the overall talent, and obviously at this point, Patrick Mahomes is the first ballot Hall of Famer. I mean, there's no arguing that anymore. I mean, you could argue that he hasn't been in the league long enough, but let's be honest, the Super Bowls that he already has, the things that he's already accomplished, the fact they talk about him every 11 seconds of the day, he's a Hall of Famer.
Well, when every single year you're compared to Tom Brady, then I'd say you're on a fast track to get in the Hall of Fame, because
you're in a very
with Tom Brady being a first ballot Hall of Famer, if you're in any sort of comparison with him, that automatically kind of puts you in that category as well.
Yeah. But that also brings you to the Peyton Manning draft, I think, too. I mean, I think that's what, 97 or 98? I think
96, I think.
I think that was 97.
96.
Was it 96?
I think it was 96.
Am I tripping?
You might be tripping.
I might be tripping. Let's see, 19. Well, I'm guessing you had a different one in mind. So go ahead. What was your next one?
I'm actually going with the year afterwards with the 1997 NFL draft. Now, there wasn't as many Hall of Famers. There's still plenty of Hall of Famers in this list. You got Tony Gonzalez, Walter Jones, Orlando Pace was the first overall selection. But I'm looking at guys that really made a difference and were extreme, how would you put it, role players that translated in their team's success in Super Bowl wins. So,
there's a lot of guys in that draft. I'm looking at it right now.
Huh?
Did you write down a lot of these guys, or did you just?
I'm looking at it right now.
I was saying, you want me to spit you off a couple, because some of these guys on here is incredible. I mean, like you said, they're not Hall of Famers. Like guys like Warwick Dunn, who was dominant for Tampa Bay, even a really good career in Atlanta. James Farrier would go on to have a great career at linebacker. Yep. We're coming on the list a little bit more.
Tiki Barber's in here.
Yep, Tiki Barber. You got Antoine Smith. You might not remember him, but those years when Bledsoe was trying to go deep and early in Tom Brady's New England career, Antoine Smith was the guy. Mm-hmm. Jamie Sharper at linebacker had a great career. Jake Plummer.
Rondé Barber was a third-round pick in this draft, who is a Hall of Famer as well.
Well, Corey Dillon's in this draft. You might not remember him. He was a great secondary guy from Miami. Sam Madison was a phenomenal defensive back at the time.
Yep. You guys got Deuce Staley in this draft.
Yep.
Jason Taylor was in this draft. Like I said, guys that played very, very well for the teams. Mike Vrabel was a third-round pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Derek Mason, fourth round.
Yeah. I mean,
round pick.
It's throughout the whole draft. It's just guys popping out to you. You're like, you know what? He might be a fringe Hall of Famer. Like he might not be alive to see it when he gets introduced.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of solid picks in this draft in the later rounds.
Well, I think even our younger crew probably wouldn't even know who some of these guys are. They're like, huh? Like, who are these guys? But these
you gotta think, I think it was up to maybe the early 90s. There was actually 12 rounds in the NFL draft.
Yep.
12 rounds. Could you imagine a 12-round draft nowadays?
I'm down.
I'll tell you, that'd be awesome.
I do think there's enough talent in college football to be able to sneak some of them guys through. I mean, they don't get a lot of chances, obviously, but I think there's enough talent in college football to where you probably could find enough.
I mean, look how many guys that are undrafted free agents that turn out being really good players.
So 96 is what I'm going to toss in the hat. I'm going to toss 96 in here. I'm going to tell you why I'm putting 96. So maybe not worthy of the picks that they got, but number one, Keyshawn Johnson, beast wide receiver early in the day. Simeon Rice, defensive end, went number 3 to Arizona. Jonathan Ogden, who's arguably one of the greatest left tackles in history of football. We're talking about wide receiver Terry Glenn, had a great career in the NFL. Let's see. You got Willie Anderson, a tackle, who's soon to be Hall of Famer one day. You got Eddie George is in this draft, number 14. Marvin Harrison goes number 19 in this draft. Ray Lewis is number 26. Eric Moulds goes 24. And then you got Andre Johnson. Oh no, sorry, different Andre Johnson. Sorry, I don't know why. I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right. But like
No,
guys like Lawyer Malloy, like you got some really big names. Brian Dawkins goes in the second round of this draft. He goes last pick of the second round in this draft. I mean, it's just funny. The 90s and T.O. goes 89th overall in the third round in this draft. So he's a third round selection, Hall of Famer. Going in the third round of the NFL draft. Like these young kids are probably, he was probably a top 10 pick. No, he was drafted 89th overall.
He didn't come out of a big school. He went to what was it, Tennessee, Chattanooga, or something like that?
Tennessee Chat. Yep.
Yeah. So,
well, that's why I was asking you right away. I said, what is your criteria when we're talking about this draft? Because
I'm looking at overall depth, like the good pickups. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, you classify a draft by somebody's first round pick not being a bust. But when you look, I like looking at rounds 3 through the end.
Yeah.
And seeing just how smart some of these front offices were to get somebody like T.O. from Tennessee Chattanooga. I mean,
stick around, Ryan, because we're going to battle that a little bit. We both have a little bit of a mock draft. We're going to fly through it. We're pretty much going to focus on picks that might be highly contested because there's a lot of teams that could go a lot of different ways. So definitely stay tuned because we're going to hit on that in just a minute. But I'm going to tell you what, my number one all time, just for me, just because I'm a homer when it comes to like my age game. I mean, I'm young at the time. This is 1998. I'm 4 years old. I'm just getting into the swing of what fandom is in '98. But I mean, aside from Ryan Leaf, I mean, we're not going to talk about Ryan Leaf, but Peyton Manning, number 1, Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. Number 4, Charles Woodson, who's arguably one of the greatest corners of all time, Hall of Fame.
Yep. Yeah.
Then you come down the list, and again, guys that aren't even Hall of Famers, guys that were just so good for their teams over the years. So Fred Taylor goes number 9. Nobody ever talks about him. He was the predecessor to Maurice Jones-Drew. I mean, Fred Taylor killed people. Trey Thomas, left tackle for the Eagles for years, was a Pro Bowler 9 times. Keith Brooking, Takeo Spikes. You keep on coming down this list. You got Randy Moss going number 21 overall, which is absolutely insane.
Crazy.
Hall of Famer, obviously. Hall of Fame, Alan Fenneca, offensive guard for the Pittsburgh Steelers, going number 26 overall. Mm-hmm. There was like 4 guards taken before him. And then you go down throughout this list. And it's just funny because as you go through the second and third round, it's like, oh, I know who that is. Oh, I know who that is. Damn, right. Why do I know who that is? And it's like Joe Jurevicius was a big name for a while in the NFL. You go through Jeremiah Trotter's a third-round draft pick in this draft. Again, you can go all the way through here. Hines Ward went 92nd overall in the third round. So, I mean, that's how deep some of these drafts are. Where they're not Hall of Famers, but Hines Ward is arguably borderline Hall of Fame. Like Michael Pittman, the running back, was a really good running back at the time. There's just so many good players in these early 90s drafts that it's like you got to have to mention them because even if it's not for Hall of Fames or Super Bowl rings, you have to recognize the depth of those 95 through 98 drafts. I mean, honestly.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That's definitely one of the good ones.
Now, which one's your favorite? I mean, you're probably going to be biased here, but what is your favorite? What is your favorite? Like, what's your personal favorite draft? Whether it's for talent or just because of the fact that your favorite players. What's your favorite draft?
I'm going to go with the 2004 draft.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I knew that was coming. I actually had that.
You asked me.
I had it written down.
You asked me.
I had on here favorite drafts, and I had a question mark. And I had next to you, I said Freight Train 04 question mark.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much. But it's not just because of Big Ben. I mean, when you look up and down this draft, I mean, you had the Eli Manning drama. He was supposed to go to the Chargers. There was a trade with him and Phillip Rivers. But you got, Big Ben in there. And then Larry Fitzgerald, one of my favorite all-time wide receivers, going to Arizona. And then the safety that we never got to watch play out his full career and to see how it ended in Sean Taylor. Kellen Winslow, I know he got in a lot of trouble. But he was actually a very solid tight end for the Cleveland Browns. And you got D'Angelo Hall in there. Jonathan Vilma played some important minutes for Baltimore, and then he later on with the Jets. You got Vince Wilfork, who could arguably go down as one of the better nose tackles in the history of the NFL. Steven Jackson went to the end with for the Rams. And then you look back in the later rounds, I mean, Michael Turner was in this draft. Chris Cooley, who, I mean, if he would have been anywhere but Washington, I think he would have turned into be one of the greater tight ends in the NFL. But yeah, there's a lot of depth in them later rounds that people got out of this. Jared Allen, who is up for debate for the Hall of Fame, went in the 4th round.
Yeah,
pick number 126.
Well, I'm even going to fast forward. I mean, being around 7 years old at my time, so one of my favorites, again, not the best, but one of my favorites. I have probably 3 or 4 favorites, but just to go with one of my favorites, just because one of my favorite players of all time is in this draft. He goes number 5 overall. That might be a hint for a second. The 2001 NFL draft. This is one of the first drafts I remember watching as a kid and actually knowing somewhat what the hell I was talking about. I remember watching LT religiously at TCU. I watched Michael Vick crazily at Virginia Tech. I watched, so like number 1, Michael Vick, right? Number 5, LT. Number 6, Richard Seymour, Hall of Fame defensive end. Andre Carter, another great defensive end. Corin Robinson, great wide receiver for Seattle for a long time, went number 9. Dan Morgan was a great linebacker for Carolina for like 11 years. Marcus Stroud, great defensive tackle for Jacksonville and Buffalo for years. Santana Moss goes in this draft, and he ended up playing for like what felt like forever. Steve Hutchinson, Hall of Fame offensive guard for the Seahawks as well. Casey Hampton for Pittsburgh. Adam Archuleta, who was one of the only white secondary guys back in the day, so he was fun to watch. Nate Clements is in this draft. Deuce McAllister, Freddie Mitchell, Michael Bennett, running back from Minnesota. Reggie Wayne goes 30th overall. Todd Heap goes 31st overall. Drew Brees goes 32nd. Algie Crumpler goes 35th. Chad Johnson goes 36th. I mean, it's just this list goes down. Like Fred Smoot, defensive back, went 45th. I mean, as you go down this list, again, it's not Hall of Famers, but like Chris Chambers goes 52nd. And, like there's just so many guys on this draft board that you forgot about, too. Like Travis Henry was a great running back for Buffalo in the early 2000s. Nobody remembers him anymore. But Steve Smith Sr. goes in this draft, 74th overall. He just retired finally. This draft had so much depth from the first round back to like the 5th round of just role play guys that are not going to stand out, that are like household names. Like nobody
but
talks
they're
about
very
that.
important. They're very important players.
Yeah, like nobody talks about Algie Crumpler anymore. But when Michael Vick got there, he was a huge asset. And there's a famous hit in Philadelphia where B-Doc levels him, but Algie Crumpler was the go-to guy because there was no passing game in that land.
Well, he was huge. He was a huge tight end.
He was an offensive lineman playing tight end. I mean, he was Rob Gronkowski before people knew how to handle that kind of thing. But they didn't use tight ends properly back then yet. Like guys like Jeremy Shockey in the NFL back then would have been phenomenal in today's NFL. But back then, just they didn't use tight ends like that back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, obviously, there's a lot of draft classes. I think really pretty much we had all of the 90s and 2001. I think pretty much what we did.
Yeah.
And not to sleep on the other one I was going to say, which I won't break it down, but 2007 when you had Adrian Peterson come out, Calvin Johnson come out, them guys. I mean, that's another one of those hell of a goddamn drafts. You can go through a lot of the 2000s. You really can. 04 is arguable. 2007, 2001, 2017, 2018, and 2019 have some arguments in there. Now, let me ask you this. We'll finish off this topic here. The 2024 NFL draft, looking how it's going to look right now, if you had to say top 50 drafts all time, where do you think this one's going to end up as far as like by the 10s? I mean, top 10, top 20, top 30, out of the top 50 drafts, as far as what kind of talent we're going to see in this draft, where do you think this is going to go down to all time?
I think the majority of the people in this draft that will amount to much will be kind of guys taken in those later rounds, like we were talking with the majority of these ones that, that third round and down was where you really found your value. And I think that's what this is going to be. I think in today's day and age, they put too much value in quarterbacks and not as much in other positions that end up going into the later rounds.
So where do you put it? Then? Is this going to finish out?
I would say
10, 20, 30, 40.
I would say maybe high 20s, low 30s, maybe.
That's where my basement is. I think the ceiling, though, with how much talent there could be between Marvin Harrison Jr., between what I think Bo Nix could be, between some of these running backs that nobody's talking about, I do think this draft for depth, how many secondary guys there are in this draft, there's a lot of good running backs, which next week, guys, just so you know, we will be going live for the entirety of round 1. At least I will be. We'll see if Freight pops in or pops out, whatever he's going to be doing. But I'm going to certainly try. Entirety. Yeah. I will be here for the entire round 1 just because there's going to be so much talent in this draft. I mean, wide receivers, not tight ends, wide receivers, offensive tackles, offensive guards, defensive ends. You got QBs out the wazoo, and you got guys like Sam Hartman, who in other drafts probably a top 5th round pick or 4th round pick. This draft is just so deep. Who knows? Benjamin Barrett says draft a center. They will, but not in the first round. It will not be a center in the first round. Right now, all projected centers are going in the 2nd and 3rd round. There's no way the Steelers are going to reach for a guy when they don't need to. They've already saw what happens when they go after a guy like Pickett and they reach. But yeah, so for me, I'm gonna say top 20s, 30s as well. But again, there's an upside that this could be like a top 15, top 20 even kind of draft class. But yeah, we'll see.
It's hard to see. It's hard to tell.
It is hard to tell. So real fast here. So obviously, Frank and I made our mock drafts. We're going to go over a couple of the more critical picks on what we think is going to happen. So we'll just kind of fly through. So Frank, give me your top 10 rapid fire here.
My top 10 picks?
Now, if you have anything crazy in there, make sure you stop and we'll hit on that quickly, like a trade or something like that.
Okay. Obviously, Caleb Williams, number 1. I mean, I'm sure every single mock draft, everybody who's anybody has Caleb Williams at number 1.
I hope they draft Jaden Daniels to throw everybody the fuck off.
I mean, it's got to be the most surefire thing at this point.
Yeah.
And then at number 2, I have the Commandos taking Drake May. I think there's too many connections for them not to take him, especially with Cliff Kingsbury now, their offensive coordinator, who worked with Drake May.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll jump in too. So we'll just tell you can finish your thoughts. What we'll do is we'll just go back and forth. This way we're not going separately. It'll take forever. But yeah, okay. Sorry. So again, so you think offensive coordinators why they're going to do it?
Yeah, I mean they need a quarterback, and why not make it easier on your new rookie quarterback by bringing somebody in who he's familiar with?
I think that if I'm the GM in Washington, I'm going Jaden Daniels, and I'm going to tell you why I'm going Jaden Daniels. You already tried the quarterback out of we've already had a UNC quarterback in there, very similar play style between who they have now with Howell, well, who they had now with Howell versus who they have in Drake May. You're going to get the same thing back. I mean, maybe May has a little bit better of an arm, but relatively you're getting a very similar player. You got rid of one to draft the other one, number 2. I think you go Jaden Daniels. You change up what you guys have been doing. You have a lot of speed on that team in general. Guys like Eckler and them kind of guys that you picked up in the offseason. So now you have a lot of room to maneuver and play a lot of different formations. Get a speed quarterback in there who is very versatile, which he's way more versatile than a Drake May is. You got to switch up the NFL right here, right now, and you got to go Jaden Daniels. Otherwise, in my opinion, you got rid of one guy to bring in a guy that's very, very similar. Mm-hmm. Who do you got 3?
I have a trade alert.
Oh, boy.
Trade alert. I have Minnesota trading with New England for the number 3 pick. I think New England has way too many holes on their team to kind of ride a 3rd round or 3rd pick quarterback. They need more quantity than they need quality at this point. Especially with next year, there's some good quarterbacks coming out next year. I think they can ride with what they have until next year. I have Minnesota jumping up to number 3 to take Jaden Daniels because I think that Minnesota has the heat on. Justin Jefferson is going to be up for a new contract. You want to do right by Justin Jefferson. I mean, that's your all-time franchise player, in recent days. Obviously, Randy Moss is, a top pedestal. But, and they went out and got Aaron Jones. I think Jaden Daniels makes that offense a little bit multi-talented. And I think Minnesota doesn't want to miss the boat on this one.
I think this is where I swapped it up. Obviously, I put Jaden Daniels at 2. And again, you could argue. I mean, again, I'm not saying I'm going to be right because who knows? I mean, either one is the right choice. There's been rumors that Jaden Daniels might go to Washington, that Drake May go to Washington. There was even rumors at one point early on in the drafting stuff that maybe Penix shot up the draft board. I'm like, there's no way. But I got Drake May landing number 3 in New England. Now, I get where you're coming from. They need more than just a QB in this draft, and I fully agree with you. However, the fan base has been tearing them apart since Tom Brady left. There's been a lot of doubt that Brady built the team, not Belichick, not Kraft. It was Brady. He leaves, wins another Super Bowl. Meanwhile, New England's been mediocre or worse than mediocre ever since. If you're New England and you trade this pick away and you end up going away without a quarterback and one of the top rated quarterbacks in this draft, your fan base is going to have a goddamn anarchy. So I think they have to go QB, whether it's Jaden Daniels or it's Drake May. I'm going to take Drake May just in the case of what I think Washington should do. I got Drake May going there. Very similar style to what a Brady type player would be. They love pocket passers in New England. They don't really like a lot of versatility. In case you haven't noticed, between Jimmy Garoppolo and all them guys they've brought in, they've never been one to go after a player that was multifaceted. They tried that with Cam Newton, didn't go very well. They are a lot more of a stay in the pocket, spread the ball kind of an offense. I don't see that changing. Drake May is the perfect fit for that team.
Gotcha. I'll tell you who they take later on.
Okay. All right.
I got more surprises in here.
Number 4.
Number 4, I have Arizona staying there, and they're taking Marvin Harrison Jr.
I have the same.
History has to repeat itself here.
You can't get rid of that pick. There's no way. But all right.
No.
So we got that. That's an obvious one. We won't talk on that one too much, but it's pretty obvious. Number 5. Yeah. So we got the Chargers here.
I have the Chargers taking Malik Neighbors. I think they have to replace what they lost in Keenan Allen with Justin Herbert. They need some offensive firepower to go with him.
Yep.
They did pick up J.K. Dobbins as well. If he can stay healthy, he could be a solid running back for them. But yeah, I have them taking the wide receiver Malik Neighbors here.
I have the same thing. Before the trade of Keenan Allen and before the cut of Mike Williams, I had them taking the tight end. I had them taking Brock Bowers. But the moment I started seeing all these receivers leave, I'm like, oh, they have to bring one back. And they're trying to get one on a rookie contract. They have to cut the salary cap down. But I think Neighbors is the obvious choice here at number 5 for the Chargers as well. So where did you go 6? So the 6 is the Giants. Now this one's crazy because I'm not sure if you saw it. Daniel Jones no longer has the captain patch. Obviously, they paid him a ton of money, and there's a lot of rumors right now that they might try to go quarterback in this draft, or they might try to go quarterback elsewhere, but they want him to compete. Now, did you buy the bait and go quarterback here, or what did you choose to go number 6?
I did not buy the bait of that, and I have the Giants taking Joe Alt. They need offensive linemen. Terribly bad. You want to talk about the quarterback but that was sacked the most last year was a New York Giants quarterback. I have them taking the best offensive lineman in the draft and Joe Alt.
So for me, and I get where you're coming from, you're talking about protecting Daniel Jones, but I'm talking about saving. So you're trying to protect Daniel. I'm trying to save Daniel. And how do you protect him? You give him Joe Alt. But how do you save him? Give the guy a goddamn weapon for the first time since he's been in New York. You got to go wide receiver. And there is a guy. Now, if there was nobody else flashy and elite on the board, I would say, you know what? You have the right idea. Go with the protection. But this third receiver, if you put Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Odunze in 3 separate drafts, they're all the top receiver of their draft class, no matter who's against them. This is a draft where you can't go wrong with any of the 3 on paper. All 3 have been dominant. All 3 had phenomenal numbers. All 3 have had stellar careers. So for me, I think, and I really hope they take Joe Alt. I'd much rather them take Joe Alt than take who I'm about to say because I'm a little nervous about this guy coming to the NFC East. But I'm going to go Rome Odunze. I think Rome Odunze is going to be a perfect fit. You're not going to find another wide receiver like this next year or the year after, whatever it is. So you bring him in now, give Daniel Jones one last shot with some real weapons. He has no more excuses over there. And then if it doesn't pan out, then you go quarterback next year or the following, whatever it is. But this is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime wide receiver class. It really is. So take the guy you know sure thing can take 1,000 yards all day. Don't regret it later. So I got them taking Rome Odunze, number 6. Number 7.
Gotcha. Number 7, the Titans. I have them taking Fashanu, the offensive lineman. If there's anything that
Penn State
you can find, yes. The regime that took over in Tennessee, their name's escaping me now, but
Taylor Lewan?
No, the head coach and the offensive line coach.
Oh, Mike Vrabel?
No, Vrabel isn't there anymore in Tennessee.
Well, he was.
But anyways,
I thought you were referring to last year. Sorry.
But anyways, he comes in from the Cleveland Browns, who we know the last few years have had some of the better offensive lines in football, and I think that's how the Titans get back into things. They picked up their wide receiver. They got some weapons on the outside. It's time to give. Why can't I remember names today?
I know.
But it's time to give them some protection up front to find those guys. And they're going offensive line. Callahan. I'm thinking of Callahan.
Bryce. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So for me, and this is actually, it's funny, we have them one pick apart. I do have Joe Alt going to Tennessee. I think it makes a lot of sense to start building that offensive lineup. You're trying to make moves here, get some guys. I think they got Tony Pollard in the offseason. Makes a lot of sense to do so. But yeah, that's where I'm going with this one. I'm going to have them taking Joe Alt at number 7. So number 8, and now this one we have a little bit of a difference of opinion here. And it's funny, by the way, I just opened an NFL mock draft that popped up on my phone as a notification. They have Minnesota trading up to number 5 to take J.J. McCarthy against the Chargers. I guess that drops the Chargers to 11. Yeah, who ended up taking an offensive tackle at 11.
I can't see that.
Yeah, they have him trade him back to 11 and then drafting Fuaga out of Oregon State, I believe that is, at 11. I don't see that happening either. But anyway, sorry. Number 8, Atlanta Falcons. Who do you have them taking here?
I have them taking Dallas Turner. I think that offense has plenty of weapons to put up points. Last year, it was really their defense that was kind of suspect. It had flashes, but you didn't have anybody that could get to the quarterback. I think that Atlanta goes defense here to try to go with that new upstart offense and make some noise this year in the NFC.
Yeah, I have the same thing. I have Dallas Turner going number 8 as well. I mean, well, actually, no, I'm sorry. No, I don't. I'm sorry. Hold on. I have him going. I do have him going to Atlanta, but not number 8. Hold on. Okay. I have a trade here. This is where Minnesota is going to jump up. Minnesota's going to jump to 8. Why? It's more cost effective. Because here's the thing. I don't get why everybody's like, oh, my God, they're going to trade to number 5. 5 makes no sense. By then, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and Caleb Williams are off the board. So anybody else available, really, they're the next team on the board that even is interested in the quarterback. So why would you trade up 6 spots to land the 4th best? That's what you would have gotten at 11
but
anyway.
The thing is, I don't see it happening. I mean, besides the Giants, everybody else has a quarterback. So I don't see a reason to jump up too far to grab them.
I just think the Chargers need a wide receiver really badly. I think Malik Neighbors would be a great one to bring in there. And you got Herbert, who's a once-in-a-lifetime quarterback. You got to give him a weapon. So for me, though, I do have Minnesota trading to 8. I think it's more realistic. They're jumping up 3 spots. They're not going to give up as much. Not to mention Atlanta's had a great offseason. They're going to be a little bit more willing to trade back, whereas the other teams on this board are desperate. The Giants ain't trading back. The Chargers have to lose other guys. You're not going to trade back. There's no way you're going to get Tennessee to move back. These guys need who they're going after. Atlanta is the first team in this draft as far as the top 10 that's like, you know what, I can live without being at number 8. That's why Atlanta's going to trade back to number 11, and we're going to get Minnesota to come up here, and I have Minnesota taking JJ. JJ McCarthy. So I do agree with the McCarthy pick of Minnesota. I just don't like him at number 5 going to Minnesota. I have him going number 8 overall to the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
Number 9.
The Bears, huh? A lot of people had the Bears maybe possibly trading out of this pick.
I thought about
They already
it.
got their quarterback. I think they stay put. And nothing better to go with your quarterback than to take somebody on defense, which for the Bears has gotten significantly better. They made some solid trades last year to make it a little better and some signings. I have the Bears taking Byron Murphy II out of Texas here. They need some defensive line help.
I have him dropping a little bit further just because I think that there's a better fit. And he's more of a DT. I think what Chicago is going to need, they missed that Khalil Mack type offense, which is a defense. I think they're going to go edge. I have them taking Jared Verse out of Florida State University. I think he's going to be one of the best edge rushers in this draft. And again, defensive tackle help is definitely necessary in the National Football League for run stopping. However, I think what Chicago needs is that old Khalil Mack boost where you get that guy making quarterback pressures. Given that secondary, which is probably not weak per se, but it is one of your weaker areas on your team, you bring a guy who can get some pressure underneath of the quarterback. Well, that's going to save that secondary a ton. So I got Jared Verse going here to the Chicago Bears at number 9.
Okay.
Number 10.
Number 10, I have the Jets getting Brock Bowers, getting that tight end, that playmaker with Aaron Rodgers this year. I think the Jets are going to go all in this year. I mean, they have to, take advantage of the Aaron Rodgers trade. They got Mike Williams to go with Garrett Wilson there. The Bryce Hall is a solid running back. They just needed a tight end up the middle of the field, and I think Brock Bowers fills that up beautifully for them.
And you had what? You had Fashanu going 6 to the Giants. Is that correct?
Out of 7 to the Titans.
Oh, that's right.
Fashanu is going to the Titans at 7.
This is where I have him going. I would love, so first of all, the pick I would love to see from a selfish, like what's winning right now scenario would be Brock Bowers. I think that would take that's the only weak spot really for the Jets is tight end. if they were to land a guy like Bowers, watch out AFC, because that team now no longer has any holes. Brock Bowers can block. He can catch. I mean, this guy is going to be the real deal in my opinion. But I've watched every single sports broadcast talk about this possibly that I could, and they have all agreed on one thing. The non-selfish thing to do to plan for the future here is you got Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys. He's 33 years old. Once he's done, it's over. You guys have nobody on the anchor. Why not draft somebody now who you can either play on right tackle, or if Tyron gets hurt, which he's known to do, he's only played 39 games over the last 4 or 5 years, whatever it is. Why not bring him in? I got him actually going right here, number 10 to the New York Jets, taking an offensive tackle.
Okay.
And from there, so the top 10 is the most important, obviously. So to make it simplified, so if you're going through the rest of your mock draft, what crazy things stand out to you? Do you have any more trades in there, or do you just have some picks that you think nobody else is looking for in this later half?
I'm going to give you 5 things that I have here with the rest of my mock draft to kind of keep it going. I have with the very next pick, the New England pick that they got from Minnesota. I got them taking J.J. McCarthy here. I think J.J. slides back down. I don't think, New England still needs to take a quarterback. But I don't even think that maybe that organization is as sold on these quarterbacks just like the rest of us. So they're not exactly going to try to reach for one. They know they need one, but they're not going to reach for one.
Yep.
I think J.J. McCarthy would be a solid pickup for them here at number 11.
Yep.
And then at 12, Denver, who also needs a quarterback. I don't think Sean Payton will reach for any quarterback in this draft. I think he's going to roll with what he has. If he can't get one in the later rounds, Bo Nix should be there in the later rounds. Michael Penix might slip out into those later rounds. I think Denver gets Roman Dunze here at number 12. And then obviously, you got my Steelers here at number 20. I feel like we should, talk about our own teams, a little bit of freedom of having your own show, right? I think that O'Donnell Mitchell slides down here to number 20.
That's what I have in mind. No bullshit.
And the Pittsburgh Steelers pick up O'Donnell Mitchell. Now, I have a slash here. Now, I would like the Donnie Mitchell pickup, but one that I've been beating the drum on that I think he should slide up boards, but I don't think he will just because of the position he plays. I'm a big DeAndre Sweat guy, the defensive tackle out of Texas. He's a big defensive tackle and moves like he's half the weight that he is. I think that's a solid pickup for somebody that runs a 4-3, a guy that can really hold up bodies for your linebackers. Pittsburgh can get back to the old ways of how they used to run defenses if you had a guy like that. So if he's there, I'd like them to pick him up. And then I got everybody wants to know where Xavier Worthy goes in our mock drafts. And I have him going with the 28th pick. Which would be, I'm sorry, I didn't write the team down.
I have him falling out of the first round just for the record. He's going to be a second round pick.
And then I got 2 more for you here. I think the Detroit Lions take a waiver on a quarterback here, and they're pick at the end of the first round. I have Detroit taking a flyer on Penix Jr. I think that the way that offense is constructed, if you have a guy like Penix who can, run, do a couple different things with that offense, it would make them extremely dangerous. And then at the 32nd pick, I have the Chiefs training a new defensive lineman, Jerzon Newton out of Illinois. Very, very solid defensive tackle. I think if he could work with Chris Jones, you would have somebody to slide in right when Chris Jones, he's getting a little bit older. Somebody that can slide in there and kind of pick up the slack once he's gone.
Yeah. I mean, for me, a lot of those are not bad. Like I said, Donnie Mitchell, I agree with you on. I had him kind of falling down. I do, however, I have Byron Murphy II slipping down to number 19. I think the Rams are the team that need a defensive tackle more than anybody to replace Aaron Donald. And again, it's not that defensive linemen are not sought after anymore. I just think the problem is the NFL is in love with edge rushers. You think about all the top guys that we talk about, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, TJ Watts, Myles Garrett, even guys like Brandon Graham and, Montez Sweat. Like, think about the guys that I'm talking about right now. These are defensive ends. Like, that's what we talk about the most. JJ Watt, like all the guys that we hype on. You talked about him earlier. Old man, what's his name? The guy out of Minnesota, Jared Allen. Like the guys that we talk about the most are always edge rushers. Why? Because defensive tackles now are not used the way that they used to be used, whereas they were just there to run stop, which some guys did extremely well, like Nagata out of Baltimore, and like lots of teams had those specialists.
Casey Hampton with Pittsburgh, for sure.
The problem is now you want these bull rushing DTs to get to the quarterback the same way an edge rusher does. Therefore, percentage based, when you look at analytics, the edge rusher is your best bet to draft. Like want, and like even if you already have one, go get a second one because you got two edges to take care of. Go grab another one. So I think Byron Murphy is going to slip to 19 only because he's a bigger guy. He's not as quick as some of these. We talk about Jared Verse. We talk about Dallas Turner. We talk about some other guys in here as well. There's a ton of edge rushers in this draft, by the way. So I think Byron Murphy does slide. I think he's going to be a good fill for a Rams team who really needs to fill that Aaron Donald hole. I do have Philadelphia where I've been really torn on what Philadelphia does. With you, it's a little bit easier. It's like you guys have like two glaring holes to fill, which is center and wide receiver. So like for you guys, you can kind of battle it. For the Eagles, it's a little bit trickier than that. We need linebacker, but obviously none are available at this point in the draft. We're going to need running back depth because we got rid of most of them. We're not going to see any of those go until the third, fourth round, most likely for Philadelphia. I have to go defensive back. I mean, I don't want to, but like there's a Dunai Mitchell, but I think he's going to be gone by then. I really think that all the mocks are pretty right so far. I think it might end up being Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. I'm not a huge fan of his. I think he's a little small.
I think you guys go offensive line again.
I mean, listen, I thought so at first, but the problem is Lane's saying he might have 3 years left in him. Jordan Mailata has at least 4 or 5 more years left in him, barring injury. You already picked up a center a year ago or 2 years ago now, but he's going to fill in for where Jason Kelsey was. The guard position, we signed a couple guys. We've made a couple moves there. They're going to finally use Tyler Steen, who we drafted a few years ago out of Wisconsin. At this point, they've put so much draft capital in the offensive lineman for the last decade. I think they have to try to shore up the secondary because that one corner that we ended up picking up, thinking he was going to play this year, they have not lifted the suspension just yet. So he might not even be active this year. So Bradbury's getting burnt like toast. Slay's getting older. Avonte Maddox we brought back with injury concerns. Safety's had a lot of injury concerns. You got to go secondary help. That's what killed us last year. If you watch that second half of games, we just started getting torched defensively in the passing game. But yeah, I agree with Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be the right pick there. Number 12, I disagree. It's not about reaching here. I think it's just the fact that you got to win football games right now. You got rid of Russell Wilson. You made it very clear that quarterback needs to be addressed. I don't think there's a better quarterback in this draft. You already know how I feel. I think he's going to fit. I think Bo Nix would fit that Denver team extremely well.
That's what I said. I think they can get a good quarterback to fill in there in the later rounds. I don't think they need to take one in the first round.
I just think with Denver being where they are, you don't bring in a coach like Sean Payton if you're trying to rebuild. You're not going to bring in a guy like Sean Payton if you're trying to slowly build something up and like make some flyers.
Well, he wants to build it his way. That's why Russell Wilson's not there anymore.
But if you think about it, though, if you want to break down quarterbacks, now size is a little bit different, but Bo Nix has some of the best completion percentage in college football. He had a 78% completion percentage last year on 470 throws. You know what quarterback that reminds me of? Who was one of the other most accurate passers for a very long time?
Drew Brees.
I mean, now obviously the size is different, but if you watch the way they play, very similar pocket presence, very good at getting the ball out quickly, very, very good in pocket presence. I mean, that is a Sean Payton type guy. He plays a very similar Sean Payton New Orleans type system. I think Bo Nix fits that team perfectly. I can't think of any quarterback that would fit Denver better.
But if you think that you can get him, because let's face it, they'll have one of the top picks in that second round that they could grab him. But why don't you get his weapon? Because you already got rid of Jerry Jeudy for one. So now you got to get Bo Nix somebody else because Cortland Sutton can't catch everything.
I just don't think Bo Nix is going to fall. I really don't think he's going to fall that far. I really don't. I mean, no matter what, I think there's teams on this draft board.
Or they could trade up in the second round. Who knows?
I mean, like you're talking about teams like Detroit. I mean, I don't see that happening. I don't see him taking a QB just because Jared Goff's numbers are ridiculous. I don't think he's very good, but I mean, his numbers make him look incredible. He's also had a hell of a supporting cast. But I mean, there are teams out there that could look at quarterbacks. For example, I wouldn't be surprised. Arizona has 2 picks in this draft. They take Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. They might take a QB at 27. Who knows? You never know. There's always a surprise at QB. There's a lot of different things that could happen here. For me personally, I think Bo Nix fits that team so well. Do you risk it? I don't think you risk it. I really don't. I think he is probably I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. But as far as projections go, you got to at least put him at the number 4 spot as far as best quarterbacks in this draft. I'm sorry, Penix Jr. does not come close. Those are a couple of my big ones there. I mean, I didn't sit down and write down 5 exactly. I didn't write all these down, but yeah, I mean, it's gonna be crazy. By the way, I do have Brock Bowers going to Cincinnati. Out of all the teams left in the first round, they are the one team with a glaring hole. They have probably the worst tight end situation in the National Football League. I have them going Brock Bowers at 18, which sucks because he belongs way higher than that. It's just a lot of his suitors now have bigger holes to fill. The Chargers have bigger holes to fill now. The Jets have more important futuristic plans they have to make. So unfortunately, it is going to drop him to the second half of the first round. But he is one of my favorite players in this draft.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, we'll rush off here. We'll hit on these last things real quick. So one thing that me and John were talking about, I went on a rant without realizing it this morning. I was very, very irritated. We were talking about Chicago and some of the things that could have happened when they still had, before they made the trade and all that. Leading up to the draft, mistakes made so far. So whether it's a team getting rid of a player because you think they're going to try to draft somebody here in this draft, whether it was a team trying to cut too much cap space, whether it was a team not paying certain guys to save money for guys next year. Like, for example, Dallas would be a good example of that, where they let everybody walk because they know they have to pay a ton of guys next year. What teams, or any one team, who do you think has made the biggest mistakes in the offseason so far? I mean, what teams stand out to you as like, why the hell did they do what they did?
I mean, it's easy to sit here and bang on Chicago with the whole Justin Fields situation and what they could have put around him in this draft to maybe maximize his potential rather than giving up on a first-round quarterback you took a couple years ahead of this one for an unknown, essentially. But I'm gonna go with the Chargers, man. I think they gave up way too much on the offensive side of the ball during the offseason, where they could have used this pick maybe to trade down a little bit to get some more draft capital and build up that offensive line around Justin Herbert. Instead of, okay, now we gotta stay where we're at, take the best available wide receiver still on the board, and then try to fill in those voids later on. I think you got to maximize the potential of a quarterback like Justin Herbert and keep those weapons around him and to keep him upright, because let's face it, he's gotten hit so much the past 2 years, he hasn't been able to finish a season, or he's been playing hurt. I mean, you can't keep continuing to allow that to happen to your franchise quarterback, because then his career's not going to be as long. You're not going to succeed as much as if he was in there fully healthy, staying upright, finding those wide receivers. So I got to say the Chargers really fumbled the ball this offseason so far leading up to the draft.
I thought that for a long time too, but I mean, when I thought about it, when I broke it down a little bit, and just to give the Chargers GM a little bit of love, Keenan Allen's getting older. He doesn't have a ton of time left. It's a team that's young. He doesn't have a ton of time, but he's also had some injury bugs. He missed, I think, 3 games last year. He missed a few games the year before. Mike Williams, I don't think he's finished a full season since he's been there, to be honest with you. He gets hurt like every single year, it feels like. Phenomenal number 2, but again, best ability, availability. And then you got a guy like Austin Eckler, also hurt quite often. It feels like to me they had huge contracts, or they wanted huge contracts, and the Chargers go, you know what? For how often these guys are getting hurt, for how inactive they are, why not let them walk, take that capital, and put it elsewhere? But I do see where you're coming from. But I think there's 2 glaring ones for me. Number one, this is my number one, is Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo got rid of a ton, not a couple guys. they lost, and I get it. Oh, well, Tre'Davious White was hurt, but he was an All-Pro the year before. So, I mean, like, okay, fine, he had an injury season. He didn't have an injury history prior to last year. He just had a freak ACL tear. It happened. It sucks. But you got rid of Tre'Davious White. You get rid of two safeties that were your Micah Hyde and what's his name? I always mess up the other guy. I always forget what his name is off the top of my head. But two safeties. Oh, Poyer. And by the way, Poyer was second in the team in tackles last year. If you count combined, I think he was just shy of number one. You get rid of your two starting wide receivers, but you're trading Stephon Diggs, and you let go of what's his name? He's on my fantasy team. God darn it. Evans. Not Evans.
Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis. That's what I was trying to say. Mm-hmm. But so you lose your top two wide receivers. You lose four guys in the secondary. You lose a linebacker. You lose a defensive end. At this point, Josh Allen's thrown it to himself. I mean, he better just start bouncing it off the. And you lost Mitch Morris, your starting center, which nobody ever talks about for some reason. And you don't have enough draft. You don't have enough cap space to fill those holes. And there's not enough draft picks in the world to fill those holes. And you don't draft until pick number 28. So I'd love to see what's going through the mind of Buffalo over there, because that's a hell of a crapshoot. But Chicago's an obvious one too, like you said, because I think they could have won the most in this draft. They've been a team that's been backpedaling for 10 years plus. They had the number one pick. You keep Justin Fields. You can trade number one pick, and you can get a ton. I mean, you don't got to trade back far either. You could trade back to number 3 if you want to New England. Give New England that number one pick. They'll give you a hell of a lot to get that number one spot if they can get it. You take a ton of draft capital. You fall back to 3. Even if I know you picked up Keenan Allen, you got DJ Moore, but even if you want to get Marvin Harrison Jr. right here, you can do that. Now you probably got the best trio in the National Football League behind Justin Fields. Use all the extra draft picks that you use, plus pick 9 that you already have in the bag, and you can make a ton of moves here. You can make a ton of. You can go defense at 9 with all the extra draft capital. You can fill little holes in the back. You can do whatever the hell you want, and you give Justin Fields that one. I think year that he deserved. I mean, I'm not a big Justin Fields fan. I told you that. I'm not a huge supporter. However, I feel like he was given a very small window of opportunity, and it was when the team was at its worst. You never gave him a chance to actually play with a complete team that had talent around him. And it's not like they traded him and then got Keenan Allen. They got all these guys before they traded him. You picked up all these great players. You could have had a ton more draft capital by trading back from 1 to 3, whatever you want to do there. You could have landed futuristic guys, and Justin Fields finally would have had his fair share. And I'm sorry, I don't think Caleb Williams is going to last very long in this National Football League, especially in Chicago with that O-line looking the way that it does. He's just not as mobile as everybody makes him out to be. He only had 148 rushing yards last year. I mean, it wasn't like he killed it by any means. Chicago gets the biggest L for me just because of what they lost is what we'll never know. We'll never know what they lost. But the amount of capital they could have gained and the amount of players they could have picked up to fill all of these holes is so massive. Whether we know what it is or not, we know it would have been a huge grab. And they just passed on that to go on a win. I mean, I just don't understand that at all. I really don't. But yeah, so for me, it's those two teams. Chicago and Buffalo for me are the jackasses of the offseason. So that being said, I mean, maybe we'll agree that your team and one of my teams are on this seat, but most pressure to succeed in this draft. Are you going to say that Chicago and probably the Chargers?
Oh, absolutely. It's Chicago, one hands down. You trade your franchise quarterback of a couple years ago, who was still on a rookie deal. It's not like you were paying the guy a bunch of money. You know what I mean? Yeah, they totally fumbled the ball here. I mean, you could have really changed the fortune of that team. I mean, you had 2 top 10 picks.
Yeah.
2. You could have, you could have very easily taken another wide receiver and beefed up that offensive line, because Justin Fields, let me tell you, was in the top 2 of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL. You don't think that was part of the issue?
Well, that's why I said if you get that number 1 pick and you trade back to 3 or 4 or whatever you want to do there, New England's going to be willing to give you a ton of picks. I mean, they'll give you, and even if you don't land Marvin Harrison, so let's say you trade back even further. Let's just say for shits and giggles, you trade back to 7, 8, 9, whatever. You're still going to land either a Dunze or you're going to land Neighbors. You're going to land one of the other 2 top receivers in this draft.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have even had to make that trade.
No,
for Keenan Allen.
No, and number nine, you could have held on to, and you could have taken, you could have taken a guy on the defensive side of the ball to get some pressure going over there. And then you also could have used whatever picks that you do pick up from that number 1 pick being slid back. And that's where you start to really utilize, some depth at offensive line or in the secondary, or maybe you want to go running back as well and help out in the running game. And now you finally have a lot of pieces at your disposal. Then you can even trade some of those picks later on if you want to. Team wants to call and move up in the 5th round, whatever it is. Now you stockpile for next year, and all of a sudden we have continual growth. And if you watch a lot of these teams that stay successful for a long time, that's what they do. They put themselves in positions to be successful next year and next year. One that I'll give Howie Roseman credit for before we get off of this topic, I give him credit because if you ever pay attention to Howie Roseman, he's always playing with future picks. He's not always loading up in one draft. Everybody's like, well, why is he doing that? You need picks right now. We might need picks now, but we're going to need picks next year too, ones that we can't even foresee yet. And he's already preparing himself for the next year because, hey, we have a good team on paper. It's not like we're a losing team, like we're 5-12. We're a winning team. We just need to figure out some small pieces. So he goes, okay, we got enough picks this year to where we feel confident about bolstering this roster. But I'm going to stockpile 4 more picks for next year because, again, nobody saw Fletcher Cox leaving at the same time as Jason Kelce. Well, now there's plenty of defensive tackles in this draft. There's plenty of edge rushers in this draft. Brandon Graham's not getting any younger. We stockpiled 4 more picks coming into this, plus the compensation picks. Fine. We're going to stash them away, and then we're going to see what happens. We knew there's something's going to happen, and now we're prepared for it. And now, can we replace that talent? Maybe not. But at least we gave ourselves an opportunity to try to fill them holes. And Chicago had one of the greatest opportunities of all time to have 2 picks at the top end.
It was a slam dunk.
Usually if you have a number 1 pick, you need it. Like, you absolutely need it. You had 2 picks in the top 10, and you truly didn't even need them. You really didn't even need them.
Yeah.
It just blows my mind.
It's mind-boggling. It really is.
Worst off season. I mean, we'll see what happens. If Caleb ends up going off and having one of the greatest careers of all time, we'll say, you know what, maybe fine, it worked out. But if that doesn't happen, if he only lasts 5, 6, 7 years, or even if he goes 10 years and only wins you 1 or 2 playoff games, we're forever going to look back and go, what the hell was Chicago thinking 10 years ago? Right. And we'll talk about it for the rest of our time. But really quick here, guys, we're going to hop off of here in just a moment. But what else are our sponsors here? AJB Sports Shop. Make sure you guys check them out at ajbsportshop.com or check them out on Facebook. Just search AJB Sports Shop in the search bar. He has all kinds of new gear coming in. I know he's trying to get, if you're an Eagles fan, he's trying to get some Saquon Barkley jerseys in Philadelphia green. Whether he does or not, I don't know. He got screwed. He still actually has a couple Giants ones. He's like, oh, great. What am I going to do with these? He still has Antonio Brown for the Raiders. But he is constantly bringing in some new gear. He's looking for some new stuff. And like I said, if you guys contact me or you want to contact him on his page, he is constantly open to ideas on what kind of stuff to find. So if you're looking for something specific, reach out. We will do our best to help you out and get you the proper gear and apparel to get ready for the 2024 NFL season. And
me? Am I up now?
This is your guys.
Okay, I get it. We have Builder Bros Construction, guys. I know the state of Pennsylvania just got some really wicked storms, as we did in Ohio. Now is a better time than ever to go to builderbros.org and register yourself for a free roof in the Christmas in July promotion. If you don't know what that is, Builder Bros Construction is giving one lucky person an absolutely free, no money, hands down roof for your house or somebody that you know that is in need. You go to builderbros.org, register. You can go on there yourself and put somebody else's name down. It doesn't matter what you want to do. But it's a wonderful promotion. Again, builderbros.org, register.
Absolutely. So check them out. Check out AJB Sports Shop. And again, do not forget to submit your mock draft. We are 1 week away. An hour before the draft, which will be 7 p.m. next week, is when I will be closing the ballot there. So as of, you have until Thursday at 7 p.m. to have all drafts sent through. Yep. If I do not see them by 7 p.m. next Thursday, which is the 25th of April, they will not count. So guys, please have those mock drafts submitted to NFLEliteBanter at gmail.com. It doesn't have to be PFF. It could be whatever you want. If you have a better mock draft simulator, you go right ahead. As long as your picks are clear and obvious, send them over to me. Let me know who you got. You can even jot them down on a piece of paper and take a picture of it. I don't care. Just make sure you email it to us at NFLEliteBanter at gmail.com by 7 p.m. April 25th, next Thursday. And we will be back to you guys 8 o'clock live next Thursday, breaking down round 1 coverage in live time, giving our honest reactions and predictions throughout the evening. And maybe have a couple beers with us, too. Maybe it'll be our first uncensored episode, because I'm sure I'm going to curse a hell of a lot when I start seeing some of this. But yeah, so tune in, and then we will also be
Late night
live.
show.
Yeah, and then we'll also be going live again Friday at 7 p.m. because the draft day 2 starts at 7 p.m. on Friday. I will be live as well. Freight train might be a little bit late. I know usually weekdays are a little tough, but I will be here Friday at 7 p.m. going live on day 2 coverage. The only coverage we're not doing is day 3 just because it's so early in the day. It's a Saturday. So yeah, we will see you guys next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. And that being said, ladies and gentlemen, have a great week, and we will see you.